Hello everyone, welcome to sqadia.com. I'm Hina Khan and today the topic of our lecture is metallic poisoning and solvent abuse. So we have basically grouped the poisons into metallic and the non-metallic poisons depending upon their properties and their chemical structures, and we'll be dealing with them accordingly. Toxicology is basically the science of forensic medicine that deals with the poisons and its deleterious or harmful effects on the human body. So basically, when we are dealing with toxicological subjects, we are grouping the poisons into different categories depending upon their physical properties and depending upon their chemical structures. In this lecture, we'll be focusing on the metallic poisons as well as the solvent abuse. Solvents are basically more of the vaporizing nature, and they have their own characteristic, poisoning characteristics, and we'll be discussing them in this lecture. First of all, in this first section, we'll be discussing the cyanide poisoning. So cyanide is quite a common poison which is found predominantly in the bitter almonds and in a lot of apricot seeds as well. And it's basically the amygdalin that is present in these seeds that is considered to be poisonous, and that is basically producing the harmful effects on the human body. So we'll be discussing that over here, the physical characteristics and the toxicological symptoms observed in such patients. We'll be discussing that over here as well as the autopsy findings. So if the fatal dose has been ingested, the person basically dies, and after that there are particular autopsy findings found in such cyanide poisoning cases. We'll be discussing that over here as well as the samples which are sent to the histopathologist. What are those samples and how are they significant over here in this cyanide poisoning? We'll be discussing that as well. In the second section, we'll be discussing the corrosive acids, the alkalis and the phenols. So talking about the medico-legal importance of these corrosive acids, alkalis and phenols, it's basically the destructive effects that we'll be discussing over here, as well as the corrosive actions of these poisons on the human body. So it can be of the superficial kind, and as well as if these corrosives are ingested, what kind of corrosive actions they have on the gut, and also the distant actions are discussed over here. Then we'll be discussing the phenols over here, and in the third section, we'll be moving on towards the ethylene glycol poisoning. In that, we'll be discussing the autopsy findings primarily, as well as the laboratory analysis, which is of high significance over here. Oxalic acid and oxalate salts are sometimes found to be quite poisonous, and what are their deleterious effects? They are discussed over here in this third section. In the fourth section, we'll be discussing the metallic poisons mainly. That includes the arsenic, the antimony, and the thallium. So briefly, we'll be discussing all three of them and what are their autopsy findings, what are the samples sent to the chemical pathologist. They'll be discussed over here in this fourth section. Finally, in the fifth section, we'll be discussing the deaths from the organic solvents. So basically the dangers of the solvent abuse that is basically quite common in the adolescent age group, and how is it abused and what are basically the substances that are commonly used for this abuse. Petrol, xylene and benzene are the common agents being used. Then carbon tetrachloride is quite commonly used as an organic solvent, as a drug of abuse. So what are the toxicological symptoms and how are they dealt with, as well as the autopsy findings they discussed over here in this fifth section. I hope you want to learn more about this metallic poisoning and solvent abuse. So do watch the other sections to this lecture as well.